In the heart of the medieval Islamic world, a secretive and highly disciplined sect of assassins arose, creating an aura of fear and mystery that would last for centuries. This is the story of the Nizari Ismailis, known better in history by their feared title, the Assassins. Far from the large cities and the centers of political power, these men built their lives in remote, hidden fortresses nestled high in the mountains of Persia and Syria. It was from these isolated citadels that they launched deadly strikes against the most powerful rulers of the time, changing the course of history with their actions. The assassins did not engage in traditional warfare, nor did they amass vast armies. Instead, they used stealth, deception, and the sharp blade of a dagger to eliminate their targets. Kings, sultans, and caliphs were all vulnerable to the quiet strike of the assassin. The origins of the Nizari Ismailis are rooted in the fractured world of Islam during the 11th century. The Islamic world had already been divided into two major branches, Sunni and Shia, when the Ismaili sect emerged as a splinter group. These Ismailis would eventually split further into subgroups, with the Nizari branch becoming particularly notorious. The Nizari Ismailis followed a different interpretation of Islam, one that emphasized secrecy, loyalty to their leaders, and the absolute necessity of taking action against rulers they considered to be unjust. They believed that certain figures were divinely ordained to lead, and their enemies, those who stood in their way, had to be removed. They were radical in their methods, and their actions were designed to strike fear into the heart of anyone who dared oppose them. But the assassins were not simply terrorists in the modern sense. Their actions were political, often calculated and strategic. They did not kill indiscriminately. Their targets were carefully chosen, usually rulers, generals, or individuals who posed a direct threat to their cause. They lived in secrecy, avoiding large-scale confrontations with armies, instead making precise, deadly strikes that sent ripples through the political landscape. Their secretive nature made them difficult to detect, and their ability to infiltrate even the highest echelons of power made them formidable adversaries. They were a force that acted from the shadows, and their enemies knew that they were always watching, always waiting for the right moment to strike. The most famous stronghold of the assassins was Alamut, a castle perched high in the Alborz mountains of northern Persia. From here, the Nizari Ismailis launched their operations, and it became the symbol of their power. It was within the walls of Alamut that the assassins trained, honed their skills, and carried out their deadly missions. Their castles, often hidden in remote mountain ranges, were virtually impenetrable, and the assassins were highly skilled in the arts of stealth, disguise, and assassination. They would infiltrate the courts of their enemies, posing as servants, beggars, or even religious monks, all the while preparing to strike with deadly precision. One of the most striking features of the assassins was their ability to instill fear in their enemies. They understood the power of terror better than most. Assassins were often sent to eliminate key individuals, rulers, military leaders, and even religious figures, by any means necessary. The method was simple: find the target, strike swiftly, and vanish without a trace. Whether it was through a dagger to the chest, a poisoned cup of wine, or a carefully placed arrow, the assassins operated with a ruthless efficiency that made them one of the most feared groups in the medieval world. But their terror wasn't limited to their ability to kill. The assassins used fear as a weapon in itself. They cultivated an aura of invincibility, leading their enemies to believe that no one was safe. Whether it was a sultan in Baghdad, a caliph in Cairo, or a king in Jerusalem, all knew that at any moment, a lone assassin might emerge from the shadows and strike down the most powerful man in the land. The fear of assassination became so pervasive that rulers would sometimes take drastic steps to protect themselves, even if it meant altering their daily routines or changing their entire way of life. The Assassin's Creed was based on the belief that their leader, the Imam, was divinely chosen and that their mission to eliminate unjust rulers was sanctioned by God. This belief gave the assassins a sense of purpose and moral justification for their actions. They believed that they were not simply assassins for hire, but agents of divine will, sent to remove those who stood in opposition to their faith. This gave their attacks a spiritual and ideological component that made them even more dangerous to those who were targeted. Though they were often feared, the assassins were not universally reviled. In fact, there were instances where their political alignments made them useful allies. The Crusaders, who had long been at odds with the Muslim world, found common cause with the assassins in certain instances. The Crusader states in the Levant were often in competition with the Muslim powers of the region, and the assassins, who had their own agenda, could be useful as a destabilizing force. However, these alliances were not built on trust, but on mutual need. The assassins were first and foremost interested in advancing their own interests, and they would not hesitate to turn on former allies if it suited their purpose. By the early 13th century, a new force had emerged in the East, one that would change the course of history and bring about the downfall of the assassins. This force was the Mongol Empire, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors. The Mongols were a nomadic people who had united under the banner of Genghis Khan, and they quickly became the most formidable military force in the world. Their armies swept through Central Asia, Persia, and Eastern Europe, leaving destruction in their wake. The Mongols were a different breed of conqueror. They did not rely on large, slow-moving armies or fortified cities. Instead, they were fast, mobile, and brutal. Their soldiers were skilled horsemen, able to ride across vast distances with astonishing speed. They used psychological warfare to terrorize their enemies, and they were not afraid to engage in total destruction when it was necessary. To the Mongols, the assassins were just another group to be conquered, and they had no illusions about the difficulty of the task ahead. The assassins had made powerful enemies over the years, and now, they were about to face the full might of the Mongol Empire. Hulagu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, was given the task of eliminating the assassins. Hulagu was a ruthless general who had already proven his military prowess in campaigns against the Khwarezmian Empire and other enemies of the Mongols. He was known for his brutal tactics and his willingness to leave no survivors. When he set his sights on the assassins, he knew that he would need to employ every resource at his disposal to break their seemingly impenetrable fortresses. In 1253, Hulagu Khan set out with his massive Mongol army to destroy the assassins. The first target was the legendary fortress of Alamut, which had long been the heart of the Nizari Ismailis stronghold. The Mongols surrounded the castle, and for days they laid siege to the walls, attempting to break through. The assassins, ever resourceful, held out as long as they could, launching arrows and grenades from the castle walls to repel the attackers. But the Mongols were relentless. They had the advantage of superior numbers and advanced siege technology, and it was only a matter of time before they breached the fortress. When the Mongols finally broke through the walls of Alamut, the assassins knew that their time had come. Hulagu's forces slaughtered anyone who resisted and destroyed everything in their path. The once mighty fortress was reduced to rubble, and the assassins' stronghold was no more. The imam of the assassins, who had long been the spiritual and political leader of the sect, was killed, and the remaining members of the group scattered. However, despite their defeat at Alamut, the assassins refused to go down without a fight. Even after the fall of their main stronghold, the assassins continued to resist the Mongols. Hulagu Khan's forces moved from one fortress to the next, destroying each one in turn. But the assassins fought back with the same ferocity they had displayed for centuries. They launched surprise attacks against Mongol forces, ambushing them in the mountains and forests, and carrying out assassinations of key Mongol leaders. They knew that their survival depended on their ability to remain elusive and deadly. However, the Mongols were not easily deterred. They had already shown that they could destroy entire cities, and now they set their sights on the remaining strongholds of the assassins. Hulagu Khan sent his forces to siege the fortress of Maimandas, one of the last strongholds of the assassins. This castle, like Alamut, was perched high in the mountains, and the assassins defended it with all the skill and tenacity they had. But the Mongols were too much. After days of brutal siege, the assassins were forced to surrender. Maimandas fell, and with it, the last remnants of the assassin order. By 1273, the Nizari Ismailis had been completely destroyed as a political and military force. The Mongols, having eradicated the assassins, moved on to other conquests. The once feared assassins, who had held the Islamic world in terror, were now a thing of the past. Yet, their legacy lived on. The fear they instilled in the hearts of rulers and warriors, the precision of their attacks, and their unyielding belief in their divine mission all contributed to a mythos that would last for centuries. Though their physical presence had been wiped out, the story of the assassins lived on in the annals of history. Their tales of stealth and intrigue, of political assassinations and calculated strikes, have been immortalized in countless books, films, and documentaries. Even today, the name assassin carries with it a sense of mystery and danger, a testament to the enduring legacy of the Nizari Ismailis. The fall of the assassins marked the end of an era of political assassination by stealth and subterfuge. It also represented the consolidation of Mongol power in the Middle East. But the Mongol Empire's expansion was not the end of conflict in the region. It was only the beginning of a new chapter in history, one where the rise and fall of empires would continue to shape the destiny of the world.